Hello, friends. I know I'm just an average guy telling creepy stories, but if you like them and get the scare you're craving for, please leave a like and subscribe. Enjoy the stories. The screen flickered, casting a sickly blue glow across my face as I sat hunched over my laptop in the dead of night. My apartment was silent, save for the faint hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floorboards settling. I'd been scrolling through forums for hours, chasing a rabbit hole that started with a thread about urban legends and ended with whispers of something far darker, a place on the deep web where the worst of humanity gathered to watch unspeakable things. A red room. The term alone sent a shiver down my spine, but curiosity, that insidious little voice in my head, kept me clicking, kept me searching. I didn't believe it was real. Not really. It was just a story. A myth born from the internet's underbelly to scare people like me who had too much time and too little sense. But then I found it. A link, buried in a comment on a sketchy Tor site, unassuming and plain, just a string of numbers and letters. My mouse hovered over it for what felt like an eternity, my heart thudding in my chest. I clicked. The page loaded slowly, the browser stuttering as if it didn't want to comply. When it finally rendered, it was stark. Black background, red text, no graphics, no flair. Just a single line. Enter at your own risk. Payment required. Below it, a field to input a cryptocurrency address and a button labeled Access. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. This was a scam, right? Some hacker trying to fleece idiots like me for Bitcoin. But the comments I'd read, the ones that led me here, were too detailed, too vivid. They spoke of screams, of blood, of things that couldn't be unseen. I should have closed the tab. I should have shut my laptop and gone to bed. Instead, I opened my crypto wallet, copied an address, and pasted it into the field. I sent the payment, half a Bitcoin, more than I could afford. The button pulsed red, and I clicked it. A new page loaded, this one with a video player embedded in the center. It was black, silent, buffering. My stomach churned as I waited, the loading bar creeping forward at a torturous pace. I told myself I could still back out, that I didn't have to press play. But when the video finally loaded, my finger moved on its own, clicking the triangle before I could stop myself. The screen flickered to life, and what I saw stole the air from my lungs. The room was small, concrete walls stained with streaks of something dark, rust or blood, I couldn't tell. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, swinging slightly, casting shadows that danced across the floor. In the center was a metal chair, bolted to the ground, and strapped to it was a man. He was young, maybe in his 20s, his face pale and slick with sweat. His eyes were wide, darting around the room, and his mouth was gagged with a strip of duct tape. His wrists and ankles were bound with thick leather straps, the edges cutting into his skin, leaving raw red marks. He was shirtless, his chest heaving with panicked breaths, and his jeans were torn, soaked with what looked like urine. The camera was positioned directly in front of him, unblinking, capturing every twitch, every shudder. A chat window appeared on the right side of the screen, messages scrolling so fast I could barely read them. Make him scream. Cut him slow. Burn him. The usernames were gibberish, strings of random characters, but the words were human. Too human. My throat tightened as I realized what I was looking at. This wasn't a movie. This wasn't staged. This was real. A figure stepped into frame, their back to the camera. They wore a black hoodie and gloves, their face obscured by a plain white mask, featureless except for two dark eye holes. In their hand was a knife, the blade glinting under the bulb's light. The man in the chair thrashed, a muffled scream tearing through the gag as the figure approached. The chat exploded with messages, demands, bets on how long he'd last. I wanted to look away, but my eyes were glued to the screen, my body frozen in my chair. The figure didn't speak. They didn't acknowledge the chat or the man's desperate struggles. They simply raised the knife and pressed the tip against his chest, just below his collarbone. The blade sank in slowly, deliberately, parting skin with a wet, tearing sound that came through my headphones clear as day. Blood welled up, trickling down his chest in thin rivulets, and the man's scream was so raw it made my ears ring. The figure twisted the knife, carving a shallow line across his torso, and the man's body arched against the restraints, veins bulging in his neck. The chat cheered, messages piling up. Deeper! Gut him! My stomach lurched, bile rising in my throat, but I couldn't stop watching. The figure stepped back, letting the man sag in the chair, his chest heaving, blood dripping onto the floor. They set the knife on a metal table just out of frame, and for a moment I thought it was over. But then they picked up something else, a pair of pliers. The man's eyes widened, his head shaking frantically as the figure approached again. They grabbed his hand, forcing his fingers flat against the armrest, and clamped the pliers around his thumbnail. With a slow, deliberate pull, they ripped the nail free, the sound a sickening pop that made my skin crawl. The man's scream was guttural, animalistic, his body convulsing as blood pooled around his finger. The figure held the nail up to the camera, letting it glint in the light before tossing it aside. The chat was a frenzy now, users typing in all caps, demanding more. Teeth next. Break his fingers. Burn his eyes. I felt sick, my hands shaking so badly I could barely keep them on the keyboard. I wanted to close the tab to shut it all down, but something held me there, a twisted, horrifying compulsion I couldn't explain. The figure seemed to feed off the chat's energy, moving with a calm precision that was almost worse than if they'd been frenzied. They picked up a small blowtorch from the table, the kind you'd use for soldering, and flicked it on. A blue flame hissed to life, and the man's screams turned to whimpers, his body trembling uncontrollably. The figure held the flame to his forearm, the skin blistering and blackening almost instantly. The smell. I couldn't smell it, but I imagined it, the acrid stench of burning flesh filling my mind. The man's arm jerked against the straps, his muffled cries growing weaker as the figure moved the torch slowly, methodically, leaving a trail of charred skin. The chat was ecstatic, users posting strings of emojis, skulls, flames, knives. One message caught my eye. Make him beg. The figure seemed to notice it too. They turned off the torch and leaned close to the man, their masked face inches from his. They ripped the duct tape off his mouth and his sobs filled the room, raw and broken. "Please!" he gasped, his voice hoarse. "Please let me go! I'll do anything! I have money! The figure backhanded him, the sound a sharp crack that made me flinch. Blood trickled from his split lip, and he slumped in the chair, his pleas dissolving into quiet sobs. The figure picked up the knife again, and this time they didn't hesitate. They slashed across his thigh deep enough that blood sprayed, soaking his jeans and pooling on the floor. The man screamed, his voice breaking, and the figure kept cutting, carving lines into his flesh like they were drawing on a canvas. The chat was a blur of sadistic glee, users egging them on, some even offering more money for specific acts. I don't know how long I watched. Minutes, maybe hours. Time seemed to dissolve as the figure worked, their tools changing. Knife, pliers, torch, a hammer at one point, shattering the man's kneecap with a single brutal swing. His screams grew fainter, his body slumping as blood loss and pain took their toll. The figure never spoke, never hurried, their movements cold and mechanical. The chat never slowed, the users insatiable, their demands growing more depraved. I felt like I was drowning, my chest tight, my vision blurring with tears I hadn't realized I was crying. Then, without warning, the screen went black. The video player disappeared, replaced by a single line of red text. Session ended. Return tomorrow for more. The chat vanished, the page frozen. I sat there, staring at the screen, my breath ragged, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The man's face was burned into my mind, his screams echoing in my ears. I slammed my laptop shut, my hands shaking so badly I could barely manage it. I stumbled to the bathroom and vomited, retching until there was nothing left. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. The blood, the burns, the terror in his eyes. I told myself I'd never go back, that I'd delete my browser, wipe my hard drive, forget it ever happened. But even as I thought it, I knew I was lying to myself. The curiosity was still there, gnawing at me, whispering that I had to know what happened next. And deep down, in the darkest part of my mind, I wondered if I'd already crossed a line I could never come back from. I didn't touch my laptop for 2 days. It sat on my desk, closed, like a cursed object I was too afraid to approach. My apartment felt smaller, the walls pressing in. the air thick with a dread I couldn't shake. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the creak of a neighbor's footsteps upstairs, made me flinch, my mind replaying the man's screams, the wet sound of the knife slicing through his flesh, the hiss of the blowtorch. I kept the lights on at night, my eyes darting to the corners of the room, half expecting that masked figure to step out of the shadows. I told myself it was over, that I'd seen enough, that I could walk away. But the memory of that red room clung to me like damp rot, festering in my thoughts. By the third night, the curiosity, the same sick impulse that made me click that link in the first place, crept back in. I had to know. Was he still alive? What happened next? The questions gnawed at me, relentless, until I couldn't stand it anymore. I opened my laptop, my hands shaking as I launched the Tor browser. The page was still there, bookmarked, the red text waiting like an invitation. Session begins soon. Payment required. My crypto wallet was lighter now, but I sent another payment, my stomach twisting as I clicked Access. The video player loaded faster this time, the black screen flickering to life without hesitation. The same concrete room appeared, the same stained walls, the same swinging bulb. The man was still there, strapped to the chair, but he looked different, broken. His head lolled to one side, his skin grayish, his chest barely moving. Blood had dried in crusty patches across his torso, his thighs, his arms. One eye was swollen shut, the other half open, staring at nothing. The leather straps had cut deeper into his wrists, the skin raw and oozing. The smell of the room seemed to seep through the screen, blood, sweat, and something fouler, like decay setting in. The chat window popped up, already alive with messages. He's still breathing. Finish him. Make it slow. The usernames were different, but the tone was the same. A chorus of faceless voices baying for violence. I felt a wave of nausea, but my eyes stayed locked on the screen, my body betraying my mind's screams to look away. The masked figure stepped into frame, their black hoodie and white mask unchanged, their movements as calm and deliberate as before. They carried a metal tray this time, the kind you'd see in a surgical room, and set it on the table with a soft clink. The tools on it gleamed under the bulb. Scalpel, forceps, a small saw, a syringe filled with a cloudy liquid. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. The figure picked up the scalpel and leaned over the man, who barely reacted, his body too weak to struggle. They pressed the blade to his cheek, just below his good eye, and sliced a thin line, blood beating up instantly. The man whimpered, a faint broken sound, and the chat erupted with approval. "Take the eye! Peel his face!" The figure didn't rush, didn't acknowledge the demands. They worked methodically, cutting another line, then another, carving a grid into his cheek like they were marking a map. Blood dripped onto his lap, mixing with the dried stains on his jeans. His whimpers turned to sobs, his body trembling as the scalpel moved to his other cheek, repeating the process. The precision was horrifying, each cut shallow but deliberate, designed to maximize pain without killing him. The figure set the scalpel down and picked up the syringe. The man's head jerked slightly, his one good eye focusing on the needle with a flicker of terror. The figure grabbed his arm, the one they'd burned before, the skin still blistered and black. They plunged the needle in, pushing the plunger slowly. Whatever was in the syringe made the man's body seize, his back arching against the restraints, a guttural scream tearing from his throat. His veins bulged, his skin flushing red, then purple, as if something was burning him from the inside. The chat went wild, users typing frantically. "What's in it? Make him choke. More." The figure tilted their head, watching the man convulse, his screams fading into gasping, choking sounds as foam bubbled at his lips. I clutched the edge of my desk, my knuckles white, my breath shallow. I wanted to scream, to smash my laptop, to do anything to stop this. But I was paralyzed, trapped by the same compulsion that had brought me back. The figure set the syringe down and picked up the saw. It was small, the kind used for cutting bone, its teeth glinting in the light. The man was barely conscious now, his body twitching, his chest heaving with shallow breaths. The figure grabbed his hand, forcing his fingers flat against the armrest, and began to saw. The sound was unbearable, a wet, grinding rasp as the blade bit into bone. The man's screams were weak, barely audible, but his body jerked with each pass of the saw. Blood sprayed, splattering the figure's gloves, the floor, the chair. A finger came free, landing with a soft thud, and the chat exploded with emojis. Skulls, knives, clapping hands. The figure didn't stop. They moved to the next finger, then the next, each cut slow and deliberate, the man's hand reduced to a bloody stump. His screams had stopped, his body limp, his head slumped forward. I thought he was dead, prayed he was. But then his chest hitched, a weak, shuddering breath proving he was still alive. The figure stepped back, admiring their work, then turned to the tray and picked up a pair of pliers. They forced the man's mouth open, his jaw slack, and clamped the pliers around a tooth. With a sharp yank, they ripped it free, blood pouring from his gums. The chat demanded more, and the figure obliged, pulling another tooth, then another, each one tossed onto the floor like discarded candy. I don't know how long it went on. The figure worked without pause, moving from teeth to skin to muscle, peeling back layers with the scalpel, exposing raw flesh that glistened under the bulb. The man's body was a ruin, his chest barely moving, his blood pooling in a viscous puddle beneath the chair. The chat grew more frenzied, users bidding for the final act, offering thousands in crypto for the figure to end it. The figure paused, their masked face turning to the camera as if reading the chat. They set the scalpel down and picked up a hammer, its head stained with rust or blood. The man's head lifted slightly, his one good eye meeting the camera, and for a moment I swore he was looking at me, pleading through the screen. The figure raised the hammer and brought it down on his knee, the crack of bone echoing through my headphones. The man didn't scream. He couldn't anymore. But his body spasmed, his eye rolling back. The figure struck again, shattering his other knee, then his elbow, each blow precise, calculated to break without killing. The chat was a blur of sadistic glee, users cheering, some begging for the figure to crush his skull. I felt tears streaming down my face, my hands shaking so badly I could barely keep them on the desk. I wanted to stop, to close the tab, but I couldn't. It was like the screen had claws holding me there, forcing me to watch. Then, the figure stopped. They set the hammer down and leaned close to the man, their masked face inches from his. They reached up and peeled the tape from his mouth, letting his head fall forward. His lips moved, a faint whisper I couldn't hear, but the figure tilted their head, listening. They straightened, turned to the camera, and raised a gloved hand, pointing directly at the lens. My blood ran cold. It felt personal, like they knew I was there, watching. The screen went black, the same red text appearing. Session ended. Return tomorrow. I sat there trembling, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The silence of my apartment was deafening, the darkness pressing in around me. I slammed my laptop shut and stumbled to the bathroom, vomiting until my throat burned. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the man's ruined body, the figure's mask, that pointed finger. I told myself I was done, that I'd never go back. But even as I thought it, I knew it was a lie. The Red Room had me now, its hooks buried deep, and a part of me, a sick, twisted part, wanted to see how it ended. The days blurred together, each one heavier than the last, as if the air itself carried the weight of what I'd seen. My apartment became a prison, the walls closing in, the shadows sharper, more menacing. I hadn't slept properly since the second session, my dreams, if I could call them that, filled with flashes of blood, the glint of a scalpel, the man's single pleading eye. My laptop remained closed, shoved under a pile of clothes in the corner of my room, but it was always there, whispering to me. I tried to distract myself, binging shows, scrolling through mindless social media, but nothing could drown out the pull. The Red Room was a splinter in my mind, festering, demanding I return. By the fifth day, I was a wreck. Eyes bloodshot, hands trembling, my reflection in the bathroom mirror unrecognizable. I told myself I wouldn't go back. I swore it. But the questions burned. Was he dead? Did they stop? What happened next? I hated myself for it, but I needed to know. I dragged the laptop out, my fingers slick with sweat as I opened it. The Tor browser was still there, the bookmark glaring at me like an accusation. The page loaded instantly this time, no hesitation, as if it had been waiting. The same black background, red text, final session, payment required. Final. The word hit me like a punch. My crypto wallet was nearly empty, but I scraped together what I had, sending the last of my funds to the address. My heart thudded as I clicked Access, the video player flickering to life. The concrete room appeared, unchanged, stained walls, swinging bulb, the air thick with the imagined stench of blood and decay. The man was still in the chair, but he was barely human anymore. His body was a mangled ruin, skin shredded, limbs twisted at unnatural angles, his chest rising and falling so faintly I wasn't sure he was alive. His face was unrecognizable, one eye gone, the other swollen shut, his mouth a bloody gash. The leather straps held him upright, his head lolling against his chest, blood and drool dripping onto his lap. The chat window opened, slower this time, the messages more subdued but no less vile. Finish him. Make it hurt. Show us everything. The usernames were the same mix of gibberish, but there was a hunger in their words, a collective anticipation that made my skin crawl. I wanted to close the laptop, to run, but my body wouldn't move. The masked figure stepped into frame, their black hoodie and white mask as cold and featureless as ever. They carried nothing this time, their gloved hands empty, and for a moment I hoped, they might just walk away. But then they turned to the metal table, its surface cluttered with tools, each one stained with blood. They picked up a long, thin blade, almost like a fillet knife, its edge catching the light. The man didn't react as the figure approached. He was too far gone, his body a shell, his breaths shallow and ragged. The figure grabbed his chin, forcing his head up, and for a split second, I thought I saw a flicker of awareness in his ruined face, a spark of terror. The figure pressed the blade to his throat, not cutting, just holding it there, letting the pressure build. The chat stirred, messages scrolling faster. Do it! Slit him open. Make him bleed out. My stomach churned, bile rising, but I couldn't look away. The figure tilted their head, as if savoring the moment, then dragged the blade slowly across his throat. Blood poured out, a thick, dark cascade, soaking his chest, pooling on the floor. The man's body twitched, a weak gurgle escaping his lips, and then he went still, his head slumping forward. The chat erupted, users cheering, some demanding more, others complaining it was too quick. The figure stepped back, wiping the blade on their sleeve, and turned to the camera. They stood there, motionless, their masked face staring directly into the lens. My breath caught, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. It felt like they were looking at me, through me, as if they knew I was there, watching, complicit. They raised a gloved hand and pointed at the camera just like before, and the screen went black. The red text appeared. Session ended. Thank you for your participation. Participation. The word hit me like a slap, my mind reeling. I hadn't done anything, had I? I'd just watched. But the guilt was there, clawing at me. A sick realization that I'd paid, I'd stayed, I'd let this happen. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip it. I stumbled to the bathroom, retching into the sink, my body heaving until there was nothing left. The silence of my apartment was suffocating, the darkness pressing in, every shadow a threat. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. I couldn't. The man's death played on a loop in my mind. His blood, his broken body, the figure's cold precision. I tried to tell myself it wasn't real, that it was some elaborate fake, but the details were too vivid, too raw. I saw the way his skin parted under the blade, the way his body twitched with each cut, the way his life drained away. No movie could capture that. No actor could fake it. Days passed. Maybe a week. I don't know. Time lost meaning. I stopped leaving my apartment, stopped answering my phone. My friends texted, worried, but I ignored them. How could I explain this? How could I tell anyone what I'd seen? What I'd done? I tried to stay away from the laptop, but it was always there, calling me back. One night, I couldn't resist anymore. I opened it, my hands trembling as I launched the browser. The page was gone. The bookmark led to a dead link, a blank screen with an error code. I scoured the forums, the ones that had led me to the Red Room in the first place, but they were silent. The threads deleted, the users gone. It was like it had never existed, but I knew it had. I could still hear the screams, see the blood. Then the emails started. They came from an anonymous address, just a string of numbers and letters, no name. The first one was simple. You watched. Attached was a screenshot of the chat window from the final session, my crypto address highlighted among the others. My blood ran cold. I deleted it, but another came the next day. You paid. Another screenshot, this time of my payment confirmation. I blocked the address, but they kept coming, new addresses each time, the messages growing more personal. You enjoyed it. You're one of us. We see you. Each one came with a new image, a still from the red room, the man's ruined face, the figure's mask, that pointed finger. I stopped opening them, but the subject lines were enough to keep me awake. You can't hide. We know where you are. I unplugged my router, smashed my laptop with a hammer, and threw the pieces in a dumpster across town. I thought it would end there, that I could cut myself off from whatever I'd stumbled into. But then the package arrived. It was small, unmarked, left on my doorstep. Inside was a USB drive, plain black, no label. My hands shook as I held it, knowing I should destroy it, burn it, throw it away. But that cursed curiosity, that same sick need, made me plug it into my old desktop, the one I hadn't used in years. A single video file loaded, no title, just a string of numbers. I clicked it. The room was different. Wooden walls, a dirt floor, a single flickering light. A new person sat in the chair, a woman this time, her face bruised, her eyes wide with terror. The masked figure stood behind her, the same white mask, the same black hoodie. They held a knife, already slick with blood. The chat window was there, the same vile demands scrolling. Cut her! Burn her! Make her scream! But one message stood out, bolded, pinned at the top. Welcome back. My crypto address was listed below it, my real name attached. The figure turned to the camera, raised the knife, and pointed it directly at the lens. The woman screamed and the screen went black. I don't know how they found me. I don't know how they know my name. I've moved twice since then. Changed my number, my email, everything. But the emails still come. The packages still arrive. New USBs, new videos, each one worse than the last. I don't watch them anymore, but I can't bring myself to destroy them. They're in a box under my bed, growing heavier every day. I don't sleep, don't eat, don't leave my new apartment. I keep the lights on, the curtains drawn, but I can feel them watching, waiting. The Red Room isn't just a place on the internet anymore. It's in my head, in my life, and I don't know how to escape it. The box under my bed grew heavier with each passing day, a black hole of dread that seemed to pull the air from my apartment. I hadn't opened it since the last USB arrived, but its presence was a constant weight, a reminder of the Red Room and the horrors I'd witnessed. I'd moved again, this time to a rundown studio on the edge of a city I barely knew, paying cash to a landlord who didn't ask questions. I cut my hair, ditched my phone, and stopped using the internet entirely, convinced that every click, every login was a breadcrumb leading them to me. But the emails kept coming, slipping through cracks I couldn't see, sent to an old account I hadn't touched in months. You can't run. We're closer than you think. Each one came with a new image, a still of the woman from the last video, her face contorted in pain, or the masked figure pointing at the camera, their white mask a void that seemed to stare right into me. I deleted them without opening the attachments, but the subject lines burned into my mind. You're next. We know your new address. I stopped sleeping altogether, my nights spent pacing the creaking floorboards, jumping at every sound. A car horn, a neighbor's cough, the wind rattling the window. My reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror was a stranger's, hollow cheeks, dark circles under bloodshot eyes, hands that wouldn't stop shaking. I tried to tell myself it was paranoia, that no one could find me here, that the Red Room was just a sick game played by faceless trolls. But the USBs kept arriving, slipped under my door or left in my mailbox, each one plain black, unmarked, a silent threat. I didn't dare plug them in, but I couldn't destroy them either. They went into the box, joining the others, a growing pile of secrets I was too afraid to face. One night, the power went out. The apartment plunged into darkness, the hum of the fridge silenced, the streetlights outside flickering off. I froze, my heart pounding, the silence so thick it felt like it was choking me. I fumbled for my flashlight. its weak beam cutting through the gloom, and checked the locks, door, windows, everything secure. But as I stood in the middle of the room, the beam caught something on the floor, just under the door. Another USB, its black plastic gleaming like a beetle's shell. My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard anyone approach, hadn't seen a shadow, but there it was, undeniable. I picked it up, my hands trembling, and stared at it, the weight of it heavier than it should have been. I told myself to smash it, to burn it, to throw it out the window. Instead, I walked to the box, pulled it out from under the bed, and added the USB to the pile. The power came back on, the lights flickering, and I sat there staring at the box, my mind screaming to destroy it, but my body refusing to move. The next day I broke. I couldn't take it anymore. The waiting, the fear, the suffocating certainty that they were closing in. I pulled the box out, dumped the USBs onto the floor, and grabbed the oldest one, the one from my first apartment. I hadn't touched my desktop in months, but I dragged it out from the closet, its cables tangled, its fan wheezing as it powered on. My hands shook as I plugged in the USB, the file appearing instantly, a single video, no name, just numbers. I clicked it, my breath shallow, my heart racing so fast I thought I'd pass out. The screen flickered and the room appeared, not the concrete one, not the wooden one, but a new space, smaller, with peeling wallpaper and a single bare bulb. A man sat in a chair, not the same one as before, but similar, his wrists and ankles bound with zip ties. He was older, his hair graying, his face lined with fear. His shirt was torn, blood already staining his chest, and his eyes darted around the room wide with panic. The masked figure stood behind him, their white mask gleaming under the light, their black hoodie unchanged. They held a cleaver, its blade rusted but sharp, and the chat window was alive, the same sick demand scrolling, "Chop him, take his hand, make him beg." My name was there, pinned at the top, my crypto address highlighted, the words, "Welcome back," mocking me. The figure raised the cleaver, and the man screamed, a raw, desperate sound that cut through me. The blade came down on his shoulder, not deep, just enough to split the skin, blood welling up and soaking his shirt. He thrashed against the zip ties, his screams turning to sobs, his body shaking. The figure didn't pause, didn't hesitate. They struck again, this time at his forearm, the blade biting deeper, bone crunching under the force. Blood sprayed, splattering the figure's mask, the floor, the camera lens. The chat cheered, users bidding for more, offering crypto for specific cuts. I felt bile rise in my throat, my hands gripping the desk, my vision blurring with tears. The figure worked slowly, methodically carving into the man's arms, his legs, each strike precise, designed to prolong the pain. The man's screams grew weaker, his body slumping, blood pooling beneath the chair in a dark, viscous puddle. The figure stepped back, wiping the cleaver on their sleeve, and turned to the camera. They pointed, just like before, their gloved finger aimed directly at the lens. My heart stopped. The screen went black, but this time, no text appeared. Instead, a new window opened, a live feed, grainy but clear enough. It showed my street, my building, the camera panning slowly to my window. My blood ran cold. I scrambled to the window, yanking the curtains shut, but the feed didn't change. It zoomed in, showing the back of my head through the fabric, my silhouette clear against the dim light of my apartment. I screamed, stumbling back, tripping over the box of USBs. They scattered across the floor, each one a tiny black omen. The desktop screen flickered, the feed cutting to a new image. My door, the one just feet away, filmed from the hallway. I heard a noise, a soft scrape, like a shoe on the floor outside. My heart pounded, my breath coming in sharp gasps. I grabbed a kitchen knife, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold it, and backed against the wall, staring at the door. The handle turned, slowly, deliberately, and I screamed again, the sound raw and desperate. The door didn't open. It was locked, but the scraping continued, followed by a low, muffled laugh. I don't know how long I stood there, knife in hand, waiting for the door to burst open. Minutes, maybe hours. The scraping stopped, the hallway went silent, but I didn't move. I couldn't. The desktop screen was still on, the feed now black, but I didn't dare touch it. I didn't dare look. Morning came, gray light filtering through the curtains, and I was still against the wall, my legs numb, the knife still clutched in my hand. I forced myself to move to check the door. It was still locked, no sign of tampering, but another USB was on the floor, slipped under the gap. I didn't touch it. I couldn't. I left that day, grabbing only what I could carry: a backpack, some clothes, cash. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, didn't leave a note. I took a bus to another city, then another, paying in cash, avoiding cameras, my heart racing every time someone looked at me too long. I found a motel, a dingy place that smelled of mildew and cigarette smoke, and paid for a week up front. I thought I'd be safe, that I'd finally escaped. But the first night, as I lay on the sagging mattress, staring at the stained ceiling, I heard it. A soft tap at the window. I didn't look. I couldn't. But when I finally worked up the courage to check, there it was, on the sill, a black USB gleaming in the moonlight. I'm still running. I don't know where I am now, just another nowhere town, another cheap room. The USBs keep coming, left in my bag, under my pillow, in my pocket when I'm not looking. I don't watch them anymore, but I can't destroy them. They're in a new box, hidden wherever I go, a tether I can't cut. The emails have stopped, but the silence is worse, like they're done taunting me, done playing. I see the mask in every shadow, hear the scrape of a blade in every quiet moment. I don't know who they are or how they find me, but I know they're close. I feel it. The Red Room isn't just a place anymore. It's everywhere, inside me, and I don't think I'll ever escape. The motel room smelled of damp carpet and stale smoke, the kind of place where no one asked for ID as long as the cash was up front. I'd been here for 3 days, maybe 4. Time was a haze now, each moment bleeding into the next. My new box of USBs sat in the corner, tucked behind a broken radiator, its weight a constant pull on my mind. I hadn't touched them, hadn't dared, but they were there, a silent accusation. I hadn't seen a new one since that night at the window, but the absence didn't bring relief. It felt like a pause, a held breath before the inevitable. My knife, the same one I'd grabbed from my first apartment, stayed under my pillow, its blade dull but comforting. I didn't sleep, not really, just drifted into shallow, panicked dozes, waking at every creak, every rustle outside. The Red Room had followed me here, not just in the USBs but in my head, its images carved into my memory, the man's ruined body, the woman's screams, the masked figure's pointed finger. I was unraveling, my grip on reality fraying with each passing hour. I hadn't left the room since I checked in. The motel was quiet, too quiet, the kind of place where people minded their own business, or had none to mind. I kept the curtains drawn, the door double locked, a chair wedged under the handle. My food was gone. Crackers and a half-empty bottle of water from my backpack, and my stomach gnawed at itself, but the thought of stepping outside, of being seen, was unbearable. I spent my days pacing, 4 steps from the bed to the bathroom, 4 steps back, my eyes darting to the window, the door, the box. I tried to think of a way out, a plan, but every idea crumbled under the certainty that they were watching, waiting. They knew my name, my face, my every move. The emails had stopped, the USBs had paused, but I felt them out there, their presence a cold pressure at the back of my neck. On the 4th night, or maybe the 5th, the power flickered. The room's single bulb dimmed, buzzed, and went out, plunging me into darkness. My heart lurched, my breath catching as I fumbled for the knife under my pillow. The silence was absolute, not even the hum of the air conditioner to break it. I stood, my bare feet cold on the floor, and crept to the window, peeling back the curtain just enough to peer outside. The parking lot was empty, the street lights dead, the world beyond swallowed by black. I let the curtain fall, my hands shaking, and backed toward the bed. That's when I heard it. A soft scrape, like a fingernail on wood, coming from the door. My blood ran cold. I gripped the knife, my knuckles white, and stared at the door, the chair still wedged tight. The scrape came again, slower, deliberate, followed by a low, muffled chuckle that made my skin crawl. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The sound stopped, but the air felt heavier, charged, like something was waiting just beyond the door. I stood there for what felt like hours, knife raised, my legs trembling from the strain. The power didn't come back, and the darkness seemed to pulse, alive with my fear. When dawn finally broke, gray light seeping through the curtains, I checked the door. The chair was untouched, the lock secure, but on the floor just inside the threshold was another USB. It hadn't been there before, I was sure of it. My stomach twisted, bile rising as I stared at the black plastic, its surface catching the faint light. I didn't touch it. I couldn't. But I knew I wouldn't destroy it either. I added it to the box, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. That day, I made a decision. I couldn't run anymore. I couldn't keep hiding, waiting for them to find me. I had to end it, whatever that meant. I pulled the box out, the USBs spilling onto the bed, a cascade of black omens. I picked up the newest one, my fingers numb, and plugged it into the ancient laptop I'd bought for cash at a pawn shop. The screen flickered, the battery low, but it loaded the file. A single video, no name, just numbers. I clicked it, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The room was new, different from the others. It was small, with cracked plaster walls and a wooden floor stained dark. A chair sat in the center, empty, its leather straps hanging loose. The masked figure stood in the corner, their white mask glowing under a single bulb, their black hoodie blending into the shadows. The chat window was open, but it was silent. No messages, no users, just a blank space. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. They just stood there, staring at the camera, their head tilted slightly. My breath hitched, my hands trembling as I gripped the laptop. The feed was live. I could tell from the faint flicker of the bulb, the subtle shift of the figure's shoulders. This wasn't a recording. This was happening now. The figure raised a gloved hand, pointing at the camera, and the chat window flickered to life. A single message appeared, my name in bold, followed by my new address, the motel, the room number. My blood ran cold. The figure stepped forward, picking up a knife from a table I hadn't noticed, its blade long and serrated. They turned, and the camera panned, slowly, to the door behind the chair. It was familiar, too familiar. The chipped paint, the rusted handle, the dent near the bottom. It was my door, the one I was sitting behind right now. I dropped the laptop, the screen cracking as it hit the floor. I scrambled for the knife, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. The room was silent, but I felt it. The pressure, the presence, like the air itself was watching. I backed against the wall, staring at the door, my breath coming in sharp gasps. The handle turned, slow, deliberate, the chair under it scraping against the floor. I screamed, the sound raw and desperate, and lunged forward, slamming my shoulder against the door, my knife raised. The handle stopped, but the chuckle came again, low and mocking, from just beyond the wood. I don't know how long I stood there, braced against the door, my body trembling, my mind screaming. The handle didn't move again, the chuckle didn't return, but I didn't let go. I couldn't. When the sun rose, I was still there, my shoulder aching, my knife still clutched in my hand. The laptop screen was black, its battery dead, but I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I knew what I'd seen. I left that day, no plan, no destination, just the knife and the clothes on my back. I burned the box of USBs in a dumpster behind the motel, the plastic melting into a black, acrid sludge. It didn't feel like freedom. It felt like surrender. I've been moving ever since, never staying anywhere more than a night, paying cash, avoiding faces, cameras, anything that could trace me. I don't know if they're still out there, if they're still watching, but I feel it. The weight of their gaze, the scrape of their blade, the shadow not quite matching my own. I'm writing this in a diner, the only place open at this hour, my hands shaking as I type on a borrowed napkin with a pen. I don't know why I'm doing it. Maybe to warn someone, maybe to confess, maybe just to convince myself I'm still human. But I know one thing. The Red Room isn't a place you find. It finds you. It burrows inside, takes root, and never lets go. I see it in every dark corner, hear it in every quiet moment, feel it in every heartbeat. I don't think I'm running from them anymore. I think I'm running from me, from what I became when I clicked that link, when I watched, when I paid. The knife is still in my pocket, but it's not for them. It's for me, for when the door finally breaks, for when the mask appears, for when the Red Room comes to claim me. And I know it will. It always does. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the screen. The room was dark, save for the sickly blue glow of my monitor casting shadows across the walls of my cramped apartment. My heart pounded in my chest, a dull throb that synced with the faint hum of my laptop's fan. I'd been scrolling through forums for hours, chasing whispers of something forbidden, something I knew I shouldn't be looking for. But curiosity is a cruel master, and it had led me here, to a corner of the internet so buried, so rotten, that it felt like I'd clawed through the digital dirt to find it. The dark web, a place where anonymity breeds monsters. It started innocently enough, a late-night binge on horror stories, creepypastas, and urban legends. I'd always been drawn to the macabre, the kind of person who'd stay up until dawn reading about serial killers or watching grainy found-footage films. But tonight was different. I stumbled across a thread on a forum, buried deep in a subboard that required a Tor browser and a string of encrypted keys just to access. The thread was titled simply, Live. No explanation, no context, just a single word and a link that looked like it had been spat out by a random string generator. I hesitated. My cursor hovered over the link, my finger twitching on the mouse. Every instinct screamed at me to close the tab, to shut down my computer and go to bed. But I clicked. The page loaded slowly, a black screen with a single video player embedded in the center. No title, no description, no comments. Just a play button glowing faintly red. My mouth went dry. I knew what this was, or at least I'd heard the rumors. Red rooms, the internet's darkest myth, live streams where people paid to watch unspeakable things happen to other human beings. Torture, mutilation, death, all performed in real time for the right price. I'd always thought they were fake, just elaborate hoaxes designed to scare people like me. But as the video buffered, a cold sweat prickled across my skin. Something about this felt wrong. Too real. The feed flickered to life. The image was grainy at first, but it sharpened into a stark, clinical view of a room. Concrete walls, stained and cracked, stretched into shadow. A single metal chair sat in the center, bolted to the floor. The chair was empty, but the restraints, thick leather straps with heavy buckles, dangled from its arms and legs, glinting under a harsh overhead light. The room was silent except for a faint, rhythmic dripping sound, like water leaking from a pipe. My stomach churned. I wanted to look away, but my eyes were glued to the screen, as if some invisible force held me there. A figure stepped into frame. They were tall, dressed in a black hooded jacket and a featureless white mask that reflected the light in a way that made it look wet. Their movements were deliberate, almost mechanical, as they dragged something, or someone, into the room. The camera angle shifted slightly, revealing a young woman, her hands bound behind her back with zip ties. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, her blonde hair matted against her scalp. She was gagged with a strip of duct tape, her muffled sobs barely audible over the drip, drip, drip in the background. My breath caught in my throat. This couldn't be real. It had to be staged. But the way her body trembled, the raw terror in her wide, bloodshot eyes, it was too visceral, too human. The masked figure shoved her into the chair, her body slumping forward before they yanked her upright and began fastening the straps. Her wrists were secured first, the leather biting into her skin so tightly that thin trickles of blood ran down her arms. She thrashed, her muffled screams growing louder, more desperate. The figure didn't react, didn't even flinch. They moved with the cold precision of someone who'd done this before. Too many times. They tightened the straps around her ankles, then her chest, pinning her to the chair like an insect on a board. My hands were shaking now, my mouse hovering over the exit button, but I couldn't click it. I couldn't stop watching. The figure stepped out of frame for a moment, returning with a metal cart that rattled as it rolled across the concrete. On it was a collection of tools. Knives, pliers, a handheld blowtorch, and other things I couldn't identify but that sent a shiver down my spine. The woman's eyes locked onto the cart, and her struggling intensified, her body jerking against the restraints until the chair creaked. The masked figure tilted their head, as if studying her, then reached for a small, curved blade. They held it up to the light, letting it gleam for a moment before turning to her. What happened next was worse than anything I could have imagined. The figure pressed the blade against her forearm, not cutting it first, just dragging it along her skin, teasing. Her muffled screams turned into a high-pitched keening, her body convulsing as she tried to pull away. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, the figure began to carve. The blade sliced through her skin like paper, blood welling up in thick, dark beads that spilled onto the floor. The camera zoomed in, capturing every detail. The way the skin parted, the way the blood glistened under the light, the way her fingers curled into useless fists. I felt bile rise in my throat, but my eyes stayed fixed on the screen. I couldn't look away. It was like the video had hijacked my brain, forcing me to witness every second of her agony. The figure worked in silence, carving thin, precise lines into her arm, creating a pattern that looked almost ritualistic. The woman's screams faded into choked sobs, her body slumping as shock set in. The drip, drip, drip of the room was now joined by the steady patter of her blood hitting the floor. The figure paused, stepping back to admire their work, then reached for the pliers. My heart stopped as they gripped one of her fingers, the metal jaws closing around the nail. With a quick, brutal yank, they tore it free. The sound, a wet, ripping pop, was drowned out by her renewed screams, so loud they distorted the audio. Blood sprayed across the chair, pooling beneath her hand. The figure held the nail up to the camera, as if presenting it to an audience. That's when I noticed the chat window that had appeared on the right side of the screen. Messages were flooding in, usernames I didn't recognize, written in a mix of English and other languages. "More blood," one said. "Break her fingers next," another demanded. "Burn her," a third suggested, followed by a string of dollar signs. My stomach lurched. These weren't just spectators. They were directing it. They were paying for it. I scrolled through the chat, my hands trembling so badly I could barely control the mouse. The amounts were staggering. Hundreds, thousands of dollars in cryptocurrency, each request more depraved than the last. I wanted to vomit, but my body wouldn't move. I was frozen, trapped in the horror unfolding before me. The figure complied with the demands. They lit the blowtorch, the blue flame hissing as it came to life. The woman's eyes widened, her body shaking so violently the chair rattled against the bolts. The figure held the flame close to her thigh, letting it hover just above her skin. The camera zoomed in again, capturing the way her flesh began to redden, then blister as the heat seared her. Her screams were inhuman now, raw and guttural, tearing through the speakers. The smell of burning flesh seemed to fill my room, though I knew it was impossible. My mind was breaking, blending the digital with reality. I clutched my head, trying to force myself to close the tab, but my hands wouldn't obey. Then the screen flickered. For a split second, the feed cut to black, and when it returned, the camera angle had changed. It was no longer focused on the woman, but on the room itself, panning slowly across, Asian the concrete walls. I saw something I hadn't noticed before. A second chair, identical to the first, tucked into the shadows. It was empty, its straps hanging loose. My blood ran cold. Why was there another chair? The camera lingered on it for a moment before cutting back to the woman, who was now limp, her head lolling to one side as blood dripped from her mangled hand. The figure turned to the camera, their mask filling the screen. They didn't speak, but the chat exploded with new messages. "Who's next?" one asked. "Bring out the second one," another demanded. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. Second one? I glanced at the empty chair again, my mind racing. Was this a setup? A trick to scare viewers? Or was there someone else waiting in the wings? Someone else who'd be strapped to that chair and subjected to the same horrors? The feed cut out abruptly, replaced by a black screen with white text. Session paused. Place your bids for the next participant. Below it was a form, a blank field with a blinking cursor. My name, my real name, was already filled in. I hadn't typed it. I hadn't shared it. My breath hitched, my vision blurring as panic clawed at my chest. I slammed my laptop shut, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip it. The room was silent now, but the dripping sound echoed in my head, relentless, inescapable. I sat there in the dark, staring at the closed laptop, too afraid to open it again, too afraid to move. The air in my apartment felt heavy, oppressive, like the walls were closing in. I told myself it was a hack, a prank, some kind of sick joke, but deep down I knew better. I'd seen too much. I'd gone too far. And now, someone was watching me, waiting. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The image of that woman, strapped to the chair, her blood pooling on the concrete, was burned into my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the masked figure's blank, glossy face staring through the screen, as if they could see me. My laptop stayed shut, pushed to the edge of my desk like a cursed object I was too scared to touch. The apartment was suffocating, the silence broken only by the hum of the city outside and the occasional creak of the building settling, or so I told myself. I kept the lights on, afraid of what the darkness might hide. My phone was in my hand, but I didn't dare use it either. What if they'd hacked that too? What if my name, my real name, popping up in that form wasn't a glitch but a message? By morning, exhaustion had frayed my nerves to threads. I hadn't eaten, hadn't moved from the couch where I'd curled up, staring at the wall. My eyes burned, my head throbbed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The curtains were drawn tight, the door locked and deadbolted. But it didn't matter. The violation wasn't physical. It was digital, intangible, and that made it worse. I kept replaying the video in my head. The slow drag of the blade, the wet pop of the nail being torn free, the hiss of the blowtorch, and that second chair, empty but waiting. For who? For me? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prank. Some elaborate dark web scam designed to scare people into paying to remove their names from a fake hit list. The internet was full of grift like that. But the woman's screams hadn't sounded fake. The blood hadn't looked like corn syrup. And the chat, those faceless users throwing around thousands of dollars to dictate her suffering, felt too real, too organized. I'd stumbled into something I wasn't supposed to see, and now I was marked. Around noon, hunger forced me to move. I shuffled to the kitchen, avoiding the desk where my laptop sat like a ticking bomb. I made a sandwich, but every bite tasted like ash. My hands shook as I held the plate, my eyes darting to the corners of the room. I kept expecting to see something, a shadow, a figure, that glossy white mask. Nothing was there, but the paranoia was eating me alive. I needed to know more. I needed to understand what I'd found, if only to convince myself I wasn't in danger. That was the lie I told myself as I crept back to the desk. I opened the laptop, my heart hammering. The browser was still open to the black screen with the bidding form, my name glaring in the text field. I slammed the tab shut, my breath coming in short gasps. I opened a new window, my fingers trembling as I navigated back to the forum where I'd found the link. The thread was gone. Not locked, not deleted. Gone, as if it had never existed. I searched the board, scrolling through pages of cryptic posts about crypto scams and black market deals, but there was no trace of live. My stomach dropped. Had they erased it? Were they covering their tracks, or was I losing my mind? I dug deeper, hopping between dark websites, using every trick I'd learned from years of lurking on sketchy forums. Most of what I found was noise. Dead links, fake marketplaces, trolls pretending to sell access to exclusive streams. But then I found a new thread, tucked away on a different board. It was untitled, just a string of numbers, but the first post mentioned a show happening soon. No details, just a promise of something special, and another randomized link. My cursor hovered over it. I knew clicking was a mistake, but not knowing was worse. I needed answers. I needed to know if what I'd seen was real, if the woman was still alive, if that empty chair was still waiting. The link took me to a new page, similar to the last one. A black screen with a video player and a red play button. My mouth went dry. I checked my VPN, my firewall, every layer of protection I had. It wasn't enough, not really, but it was all I could do. I clicked play. The feed loaded faster this time. The same room appeared. Concrete walls, stained and damp, the single overhead light casting harsh shadows. The chair was there, but it was empty. No straps, no blood, just a clean metal frame bolted to the floor. The second chair was gone, as if it had never been there. The dripping sound was louder now, a steady rhythm that set my teeth on edge. I leaned closer to the screen, my breath shallow. Where was the woman? Where was the masked figure? The room looked abandoned, but the feed was live. I could tell from the faint flicker of the light and the occasional glitch in the stream. Then I heard it. A low, muffled sound, like someone trying to speak through a gag. The camera panned slowly to the right, revealing a corner of the room I hadn't seen before. There, slumped against the wall, was the woman from the first stream. Her blonde hair was matted with blood, her face bruised and swollen. The duct tape was gone, replaced by a crude metal gag bolted into her mouth, forcing her jaws apart. Her eyes were half open, glazed with pain or drugs or both. Her arms were bound behind her, her legs twisted at unnatural angles as if they'd been broken and left to set wrong. She was alive, but barely. My heart stopped. I'd hoped, prayed, that she was dead, that her suffering had ended. But this was worse. They'd kept her, broken her, and now they were showing her off like a trophy. The camera lingered on her, zooming in on the gag. The dried blood crusted around her lips, the way her chest heaved with shallow, ragged breaths. The chat window popped up again, the same flood of usernames and demands. "Finish her," one said. "Cut her throat," another suggested. "No, keep her alive," a third countered, followed by a string of numbers that looked like a bid. My stomach churned. They weren't just watching. They were betting on her life. A new figure entered the frame. Not the same one as before. This one was shorter, stockier, wearing a similar black hoodie but with a different mask, this one painted with red streaks that looked like blood. They carried a toolbox, the kind you'd see in a garage, rusted and dented. They set it down beside the woman, who flinched at the sound, her body jerking against the wall. The figure crouched in front of her, tilting their head as if inspecting her. Then they reached into the toolbox and pulled out a hammer. I wanted to scream, to throw my laptop across the room, but I was paralyzed. The figure raised the hammer, holding it above her knee. The chat exploded with messages, some cheering, others demanding different targets, her hands, her face, her skull. The woman's eyes widened, a choked whimper escaping through the gag. The figure paused, as if savoring the moment, then brought the hammer down. The crack of bone was so loud it echoed in my skull, drowning out her scream. Her leg bent inward, the skin splitting where the hammer struck, blood spurting onto the concrete. The camera zoomed in, capturing the jagged edge of bone protruding through the wound. I gagged, clapping a hand over my mouth. The figure didn't stop. They swung again, this time at her other knee, shattering it with the same sickening crunch. Her body convulsed, her head slamming back against the wall as she screamed through the gag, blood and saliva dripping down her chin. The figure worked methodically, moving to her hands, crushing her fingers one by one. Each strike was deliberate, each scream more broken than the last. The chat was a frenzy now, messages scrolling so fast I couldn't read them all. "More!" they demanded. "Slow it down," others complained. "Make her beg." The figure obliged. They set the hammer down and pulled a syringe from the toolbox, filled with a cloudy liquid. They jabbed it into her neck, her body going limp almost instantly. Her screams faded to whimpers, her eyes rolling back in her head. The figure removed the gag, her jaw slack, drool mixing with the blood on her face. They leaned close, their mask inches from her, and whispered something the microphone didn't catch. Then they stood, turning to the camera. The feed froze on their mask, the red streaks glinting under the light. The screen went black, but the audio didn't stop. I heard her breathing, shallow and wet, punctuated by soft, incoherent moans. Then a new sound, a faint, mechanical click, like a lock turning. The dripping was back, louder, closer, as if it was coming from my own room. I tore my headphones off, my heart pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. The apartment was silent, but the sound lingered in my head, inescapable. I slammed the laptop shut again, shoving it under the couch like a child hiding a monster. I curled up, my knees to my chest, trying to breathe, trying to think. I needed to report this, to tell someone. Police, FBI, anyone. But what would I say? That I'd found a torture stream on the dark web? That my name had appeared in a form I hadn't filled out? They'd think I was crazy, or worse, they'd dig into what I'd been doing online and assume I was complicit. I was trapped, just like her. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. I couldn't tell. My phone buzzed, startling me so badly I nearly screamed. It was a notification, An email from an address I didn't recognize. A string of random characters ending in an onion domain. The subject line was blank. Against every instinct, I opened it. There was no text, just an attachment. A single image. I downloaded it, my hands shaking, and opened it. It was a screenshot of the stream, the woman's broken body slumped against the wall. But in the corner of the image, faintly visible in the shadows, was the second chair. And sitting in it, strapped down, was me. My face, my clothes, my apartment wall in the background. I dropped the phone, my vision blurring as panic consumed me. The dripping sound was back, not in my head this time, but real, coming from the other side of my door. The dripping sound was no longer just in my head. It was real, insistent, coming from the hallway outside my apartment door. Each wet plop felt like a hammer against my skull, sinking with the frantic thud of my pulse. I sat frozen on the couch, my phone still on the floor where I'd dropped it, the image of myself strapped to that second chair burning behind my eyes. It wasn't possible. I was here, in my apartment, not in some concrete dungeon. But the photo was undeniable. My face, my clothes, the peeling paint on my wall in the background. It was like they'd ripped me out of my reality and pasted me into theirs. I forced myself to stand, my legs trembling as I crept toward the door. The dripping grew louder, more deliberate, like someone was tapping a leaking pipe just to torment me. I pressed my ear against the wood, holding my breath. Silence. Then another drip, followed by a faint shuffle, like footsteps dragging across the floor. My hand hovered over the deadbolt. Every instinct screamed not to open the door, but I had to know. I had to see if something or someone was out there. I turned the lock, the click deafening in the quiet, and cracked the door open. The hallway was empty. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting a sickly yellow glow over the stained carpet. A small puddle of water glistened on the floor, right outside my door, its surface rippling as another drop fell from the ceiling. I looked up. Nothing. No leak, no pipe, just cracked plaster. My stomach twisted. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the bolt. The dripping stopped, but the silence was worse. It felt alive, like it was watching me. I stumbled back to the couch, grabbing my phone off the floor. The image was still there, taunting me. I zoomed in, searching for any sign it was fake, a glitch, a bad edit, anything. But the details were perfect. The coffee stain on my shirt, the scar on my left cheek from a childhood accident, the angle of my desk lamp in the background. It was me, but it couldn't be. I hadn't left my apartment in days. I hadn't been taken, had I? Panic clawed at my chest. I needed to get out, to run, to tell someone. But who? The police wouldn't believe me, not without proof, and I wasn't about to hand them my laptop with its history of dark web browsing. I thought about calling a friend, but the thought of dragging someone else into this felt wrong, dangerous. I was alone, and whatever was happening was closing in. I opened my laptop again, unable to stop myself. The browser was still on the blank page from the last stream, but the video player was gone. In its place was a single line of text. You're invited to the next show. Don't be late. Below it was a new link, another string of random characters. My heart sank. They were toying with me, pulling me deeper into their game. I wanted to delete the tab, to smash the laptop and burn the pieces, but I knew it wouldn't matter. They had my name, they had my face, they had me. I clicked the link. The feed loaded instantly this time. No buffering, no delay. The concrete room was back, but it was different. Cleaner, the bloodstains scrubbed from the floor, the chair polished to a dull shine. The woman was gone, no trace of her or the horror I'd witnessed. The second chair was there again, tucked in the shadows, its straps dangling like hungry mouths. The dripping sound was fainter now, almost soothing, but it made my skin crawl. The camera panned slowly, revealing a new addition, a metal table in the corner covered with a tarp. Something bulged beneath it, irregular and lumpy, like a body. The masked figure from the first stream, the tall one with the glossy white mask, stepped into frame. They moved with the same mechanical precision, their head tilted as if listening to something I couldn't hear. The chat window popped up, already alive with messages. "Show us the table," one demanded. "Is it her?" another asked. "New meat," a third typed. followed by a string of laughing emojis. My stomach churned. I scrolled through the chat, my eyes catching on a username that sent a chill down my spine. My own. It wasn't me. I hadn't logged in. But there it was, posting a single message. I'm here. I slammed my hands on the keyboard, trying to close the tab, but the screen wouldn't respond. The figure turned to the camera, their mask filling the frame, and I swore they were looking at me. They raised a gloved hand and pointed, not at the camera but through it, directly at me. The chat erupted, messages flooding in. He's watching! Get him! Strap him down! My breath hitched, my vision blurring as I yanked the power cord from the laptop. The screen went black, but the hum of the fan kept going. A low, mocking drone. I threw the laptop across the room, the crash echoing in the apartment. I was hyperventilating now, my hands clutching my hair as I tried to think. This wasn't just a stream, it was personal. They knew me, knew where I was, knew how to get inside my head. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, but the screen lit up with another email from the same Onion address. No subject, just a single line. Open the door. I froze. The dripping started again, louder, closer, coming from the hallway. I backed away from the door, my eyes darting to the windows, the fire escape, anywhere I could run. But the apartment felt like a trap, the walls pressing in, the air thick with the stench of my own fear. I grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter, its blade dull but better than nothing. The dripping stopped, replaced by a new sound, a low, rhythmic thumping, like someone knocking softly but deliberately. I crept to the door, the knife trembling in my hand. I looked through the peephole, expecting to see the hallway, the puddle, maybe even the masked figure. But the view was blocked, the lens covered by something dark and wet, like a finger pressed against it. I stumbled back, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The thumping grew louder, faster, matching the rhythm of my pulse. Then my phone buzzed again. Another email, another attachment. I didn't want to open it, but my hands moved on their own, the knife clattering to the floor. The image loaded slowly, pixel by pixel, revealing the concrete room. The tarp was off the table now, and beneath it was a body. Not the woman, but a man. His face was obscured, but his clothes were familiar. A stained shirt, a scar on his cheek. My scar. It was me laid out on the table, my eyes open but empty, my chest still. The thumping stopped. The silence was deafening. I turned toward the door, my body moving without thought, driven by a need to escape. But as I reached for the handle, the door creaked open on its own, revealing the hallway. Empty, except for the puddle, now larger, darker, spreading across the carpet like blood. At its center was a single object, a glossy white mask, its surface gleaming under the fluorescent lights. I screamed, slamming the door shut and stumbling back. The knife was gone, the floor beneath me slick with something warm and wet. I looked down, my bare feet stained red, the puddle seeping into my apartment from under the door. The phone buzzed again, but I didn't look. I couldn't. The room was spinning, the walls closing in, the dripping sound now everywhere. Behind me, above me, inside me. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, the blood pooling around my feet. But when I finally looked at my phone, the screen was black, reflecting my face like a mirror. Except it wasn't my face. It was the mask, glossy and white, staring back at me. The mask stared back at me from the phone screen, its blank, glossy surface warping my reflection into something unrecognizable. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone, my breath coming in shallow gasps as I backed away from the door. The puddle of blood, or whatever it was, continued to seep under the crack, spreading across my apartment floor, its metallic stench filling the air. The dripping sound was everywhere now, a relentless pulse that seemed to come from the walls, the ceiling, my own skull. I wanted to run, to scream, to wake up from this nightmare, but my body felt heavy, like I was sinking into the floor, trapped in a reality that was no longer mine. I stumbled to the couch, clutching the phone, my eyes darting to the door, the windows, the shadows in the corners. The mask outside the door. Had it been real? I hadn't touched it. Hadn't opened the door fully, but its image was burned into my mind, as vivid as the woman's screams, as the hammer shattering her bones. My phone buzzed again, a low vibration that felt like a heartbeat in my hand. Another email, another attachment. I didn't want to look, but my thumb moved on its own, opening the message. The screen filled with a new image, the concrete room, the metal table, and me, or the thing that looked like me, lying there, eyes open, lifeless. But now the masked figure stood over the body, holding a scalpel, its blade poised above my chest. I threw the phone across the room, the crack of it hitting the wall barely audible over the pounding in my ears. I sank to the floor, my back against the couch, my hands clawing at my face as if I could tear away the image of that mask. It wasn't possible. I was here, alive, breathing, not on some table in a torture chamber. But the photo, the emails, my name in the chat, they were real. They were coming for me, and I didn't know how to stop them. The dripping grew louder, more erratic, like footsteps splashing through the puddle. I forced myself to stand, grabbing the kitchen knife from where I'd dropped it. The blade was slick with blood now, though I hadn't touched anything. I stared at it, my mind reeling. Was it mine? Had I cut myself without realizing? My hands were clean, but the floor wasn't. The blood had spread, pooling around the couch, lapping at my feet. I backed toward the window, the only exit I could think of. The fire escape was old, rusted, but it was my only chance. I yanked the curtains aside, my heart stopping as I saw my reflection in the glass. It wasn't me. It was the mask again, hovering where my face should have been, its glossy surface gleaming in the dim light. I stumbled back, the knife slipping from my hand, clattering into the blood. The window was locked, the latch rusted shut, but I didn't care. I grabbed a chair and swung it at the glass, shattering it into 1,000 jagged pieces. Cold air rushed in, carrying the distant wail of sirens, but it did nothing to calm me. I climbed onto the fire escape, the metal creaking under my weight, and looked down at the street below. The city was alive, oblivious, its lights blurring through my tears. I started to climb down, but a sound stopped me, a low, guttural hum like a machine waking up. It was coming from inside the apartment. I froze, my foot slipping on the slick metal rung. The hum grew louder, joined by the dripping, now a frantic, splashing rhythm. Against every shred of reason, I looked back through the broken window. The apartment was dark, the lights I'd left on now dead. But in the center of the room, illuminated by the faint glow of my laptop screen, was the mask. Not on the floor, not outside the door, but floating, suspended in the air, its blank eyes fixed on me. I screamed, losing my grip on the fire escape. My body lurched backward, my hand scrabbling for the railing as I fell. I hit the platform below, pain exploding in my ribs, the air driven from my lungs. The knife was gone, lost somewhere in the fall. I lay there gasping, staring up at the broken window. The mask was still there, hovering, its surface reflecting the city lights like a mirror. It didn't move, didn't speak, but I felt its presence, heavy and suffocating, pressing down on me. I dragged myself to my feet, my body screaming in pain, and stumbled down the fire escape, nearly falling again as the rusted bolts groaned under my weight. The street was empty when I reached it, the sirens gone, the city unnaturally quiet. I ran, my bare feet slapping against the cold pavement, not knowing where I was going, only that I had to get away. The mask, the blood, the stream, they were behind me, but I could still feel them, like a weight tethered to my soul. I ducked into an alley, my breath ragged, my vision swimming. I leaned against a brick wall trying to think. I needed help. A plan. Something. My phone was back in the apartment, but I couldn't go back, not with that thing there. I patted my pockets, hoping for something. Keys, cash, anything. But they were empty. Then I felt it. A small, hard object in my jacket pocket. I pulled it out, my hands trembling. It was a USB drive, black and unmarked. I hadn't put it there. I hadn't even seen it before. My stomach dropped. I wanted to throw it into the gutter, to crush it under my heel, but I couldn't. It was another piece of their game, another hook they'd sunk into me. I shoved it back into my pocket and kept moving, my eyes scanning the alley for any sign of movement. The city felt wrong, like a stage set built just for me. The streetlights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. I heard the dripping again, faint but unmistakable, echoing from somewhere in the darkness. I found a 24-hour diner a few blocks away. its neon sign buzzing like a dying insect. I stumbled inside, the bell above the door jangling as I collapsed into a booth. The waitress, an older woman with tired eyes, barely looked at me as she poured me a cup of coffee. "You okay, hun?" she asked, her voice flat. I nodded, unable to speak, my hands wrapped around the mug for warmth. The diner was nearly empty, just a trucker at the counter and a man in a hoodie in the corner, his face hidden. I watched him, my heart racing. Was he one of them? Was he watching me? I pulled the USB drive from my pocket, turning it over in my hands. It was plain, no brand, no markings, but it felt heavy, like it carried the weight of everything I'd seen. I needed to know what was on it, but I didn't have a computer, and I wasn't sure I could trust one even if I did. The diner had a payphone in the back, but who would I call? The police? They'd lock me up for sounding insane. A friend? I didn't want to drag anyone else into this. I was alone, and the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The man in the hoodie stood, his movements slow, deliberate. He didn't look at me, but as he passed my booth, he dropped something on the table, a folded piece of paper. I froze, my eyes locked on it as he walked out the door, the bell jangling behind him. The waitress didn't notice, her back turned as she wiped down the counter. I reached for the paper, my hand shaking, and unfolded it. Inside was a single word written in red ink, "Watch." I looked up, my heart pounding, but the man was gone. The street outside was empty, the neon sign casting its sickly glow across the pavement. The USB drive felt heavier in my hand, like it was pulling me toward something I couldn't escape. I knew what I had to do, even if every part of me screamed against it. I had to find a computer. I had to see what was on the drive. I had to know how deep this went. I left the diner, the cold air biting at my skin as I stepped back into the night. The dripping was louder now, following me, a constant reminder that they were still out there, still watching. I found an internet cafe a few blocks away, its windows fogged with condensation, the hum of old computers audible through the glass. I pushed the door open, the smell of stale coffee and cigarette smoke hitting me as I stepped inside. The place was nearly empty, just a kid in a hoodie playing some game in the corner and a bored clerk scrolling on his phone. I paid for an hour, my hands shaking as I handed over the cash. The clerk didn't look at me, just pointed to a computer in the back. I sat down, the chair creaking under my weight, and plugged in the USB drive. The screen flickered, a warning popping up about an unknown device. But I clicked through it. A single file appeared. A video, untitled, no extension. My mouth went dry. I glanced around, making sure no one was watching, then double-clicked. The feed loaded, and I was back in the concrete room. The chair was empty, the table gone, the floor clean. But the dripping was there, louder than ever, echoing through the computer's tinny speakers. The masked figure appeared, the tall one with the glossy white mask, holding something in their hand, a phone. They held it up to the camera, the screen showing a live feed of me, sitting in the internet cafe, staring at the computer. My blood ran cold. I turned, expecting to see a camera, a figure, anything, but the cafe was empty except for the kid and the clerk. The figure on the screen tilted their head, their mask glinting as they pointed to the second chair. The camera panned to it, and there I was again, strapped down, my face pale, my eyes wide with terror. But this time I was moving, struggling against the straps, my mouth open in a silent scream. The feed cut to black, and a new message appeared. "See you soon." The dripping stopped. The cafe was silent. I ripped the USB drive from the computer, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. I stood, ready to run, but the lights flickered, and the screen came back on. It wasn't the concrete room anymore. It was my apartment, the broken window, the blood on the floor, the mask still hovering in the air. The screen went black, but the image of the figure pointing at the camera lingered in my mind, as if it had been carved into my retinas. My hands trembled as I clutched the USB drive, its edges biting into my palm. The internet cafe was suffocatingly quiet, the hum of the computers now a low, menacing drone. The kid in the hoodie was still in the corner, his game flashing silently on the screen. But the clerk was gone, his phone left abandoned on the counter. I glanced at the door, expecting to see the masked figure standing there, but the street outside was empty, shrouded in fog that hadn't been there minutes ago. The dripping sound was back, faint but unmistakable. seeping into my ears like poison. I shoved the USB drive into my pocket and bolted for the door, the bell jangling violently as I pushed it open. The cold air hit me like a slap, the fog swallowing the streetlights, turning the city into a maze of indistinct shapes. I ran, my breath ragged, my bare feet stinging against the pavement. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to keep moving, to outrun the thing that was chasing me, though I couldn't tell if it was real or just the terror clawing at my mind. The dripping followed, louder now, splashing in time with my steps as if the city itself was bleeding. I turned into another alley, my lungs burning, my ribs throbbing from the fall on the fire escape. The walls closed in, graffiti-smeared bricks glistening with dampness. I stopped, leaning against a dumpster, trying to catch my breath. The fog was thicker here, curling around me like fingers. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket, staring at it. I wanted to throw it away, to rid myself of its weight. But I knew it wouldn't matter. They'd found me in my apartment, in the cafe, in the stream. The drive wasn't the problem. I was. A sound broke the silence. A low, wet scrape, like something heavy being dragged across the ground. I froze, my eyes scanning the alley. The fog shifted, and for a moment I saw a shape. Tall, hooded, a glossy white mask catching the faint light. It was there, then gone, swallowed by the mist. My heart lurched. I backed away, my hands fumbling for anything to defend myself, but there was nothing. Just the USB drive, useless in my grip. The scraping came again, closer, deliberate, accompanied by the dripping, now a steady stream, like a faucet left running. I ran again, the alley twisting and turning, the fog disorienting me until I wasn't sure if I was moving forward or circling back. The scraping followed, relentless, punctuated by a new sound, a low, guttural hum, the same one I'd heard in my apartment. It vibrated in my chest, making my teeth ache. I burst out of the alley onto a deserted street, the fog parting just enough to reveal a flickering neon sign. Another internet cafe, its windows dark but the door slightly ajar. I hesitated, my instincts screaming to keep running, but the scraping was getting louder, the hum closer. I had no choice. I slipped inside, the door creaking as it swung shut behind me. The cafe was abandoned, the computers off, their screens reflecting the dim glow of an emergency exit sign. The air was stale, thick with the smell of dust and something sharper, metallic. Blood. I gagged, covering my mouth, my eyes darting to the corners of the room. The dripping was here too, coming from somewhere in the back, where a hallway led to a restroom. I didn't want to go there, but I needed a computer, needed to see if the USB drive held any answers, any way to stop this. I found a computer that still had power, its fan whirring softly as I plugged in the drive. The screen flickered, the same warning about an unknown device popping up. I clicked through, my hands shaking, and the video file appeared again. I didn't want to play it, but I had to know. I double-clicked, the feed loading instantly. The concrete room was back, but it was different, smaller, the walls closer, the light harsher. The chair was there, empty, but the second chair was gone. In its place was a mirror, floor to ceiling, reflecting the room and the camera itself. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the screen, searching for the masked figure, for the woman, for myself. The hum started again, low and bone-deep, coming from the speakers and the room around me. The figure appeared in the mirror, their white mask gleaming, but they weren't in the chair or the room. They were only in the reflection. They tilted their head as if studying me, then raised a hand, pressing it against the mirror. The glass rippled like water, and their fingers pushed through, stretching toward the camera. I gasped, shoving back from the desk, the chair toppling behind me. The figure's hand froze, the mirror still rippling, and the chat window popped up, messages flooding in. He's here. He's watching. Get him. I ripped the USB drive from the computer, the screen going black, but the hum didn't stop. It was louder now, coming from the hallway, joined by the dripping, now a torrent, like a pipe had burst. I stumbled to my feet, my eyes fixed on the hallway. A shadow moved there, tall and hooded, the mask catching the exit sign's red glow. I backed toward the door, my hands fumbling for the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The shadow stepped closer, the scraping sound returning, slow and deliberate, like they were dragging something heavy. I turned and ran for the restroom, the only other exit I could see. The door slammed open, the smell of blood overwhelming, the floor slick with it. The dripping was deafening, coming from a sink overflowing with dark, viscous liquid. I slipped, catching myself on the counter, my reflection staring back from a cracked mirror. But it wasn't my face. It was the mask, its glossy surface smeared with blood, its blank eyes fixed on me. I screamed, my voice echoing in the small room, and the shadow appeared in the doorway, their mask identical to the one in the mirror. I lunged for the window above the sink, smashing it with my elbow, the glass cutting into my skin. Blood ran down my arm, mixing with the puddle on the floor. But I didn't care. I climbed through, jagged shards tearing at my clothes, and fell into the alley outside. The fog was thicker now, the city gone, replaced by an endless gray void. I ran, the scraping and hum fading behind me. But the dripping stayed, a constant reminder that I wasn't free. I don't know how long I ran, the alleys blending into each other, the fog choking my lungs. I found a payphone, its receiver dangling, and fumbled for change I didn't have. I dialed 911 anyway, praying it would work, but the line was dead, filled with static and a faint rhythmic drip. I slammed the receiver down, my hands shaking, and noticed something taped to the phone. A small black envelope. My name was written on it in red ink, the same handwriting as the note from the diner. I tore it open, a single photo falling out. It was the concrete room, the chair, the mirror. But now I was in the chair, strapped down, my face pale, my eyes wide with terror. The masked figure stood behind me, their scalpel pressed against my throat, a thin line of blood already forming. I dropped the photo, my knees buckling, and it fluttered to the ground, landing in a puddle of blood that hadn't been there a moment ago. The hum returned, louder, closer, vibrating in my bones. I looked up, the fog parting just enough to reveal a figure standing at the end of the alley. Their mask gleamed, their hand raised, pointing at me. The dripping was everywhere, the ground slick with it, my feet slipping as I tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The alley was a dead end, the walls closing in, the fog swallowing everything except the figure, now walking toward me, their steps slow, deliberate, the scalpel in their hand catching the light. I backed against the wall, my hands scrabbling for anything, a weapon, a way out. My fingers brushed something cold and hard, a door hidden in the brick, its surface rusted but solid. I pushed, my shoulder straining, and it gave way, spilling me into darkness. I fell, the door slamming shut behind me, the hum and dripping cut off by silence. I lay there, gasping, my eyes adjusting to the dim light. I was in a room, concrete walls, a single overhead light, a metal chair bolted to the floor. My heart stopped. It was the room from the stream. The chair was empty, but the mirror was there, reflecting me, sprawled on the floor, blood dripping from my arm. I stood, my legs shaking, and approached the mirror, my reflection moving with me. But as I got closer, the reflection changed. It wasn't me anymore. It was the masked figure, their scalpel raised, their head tilted. I spun around, expecting to see them behind me, but the room was empty. When I looked back at the mirror, my reflection was gone. Only the mask remained, floating in the glass, its blank eyes staring through me. The door behind me creaked open, the hum and dripping flooding back in. I turned, the figure standing there, their mask identical to the one in the mirror. They stepped forward, the scalpel glinting, and the chat window appeared in my mind, unbidden, messages scrolling. Cut him. Make him scream. Finish it. I backed away, my hands raised, but there was nowhere to go. The mirror was behind me, the figure in front, the room closing in like a trap. The figure raised the scalpel, and I felt the cold bite of metal against my throat, though I couldn't see it. The dripping was inside me now, filling my veins, drowning my screams. The last thing I saw was the mask, its glossy surface reflecting my face. Not terrified, not pleading, but smiling, as if I'd been part of the show all along. The cold bite of the scalpel pressed against my throat, a thin line of pain that felt both impossibly real and distant, like I was watching it happen to someone else. The masked figure loomed over me, their glossy white mask reflecting my face, not the screaming, pleading version I expected, but a twisted, smiling caricature, my lips curled in a way that wasn't mine. The concrete room was suffocating, the walls pulsing with the dripping sound, now a roaring flood that drowned out everything except the hum vibrating in my bones. The chat window burned in my mind, unscrolling like a living thing. Cut him deeper. Make it slow. He's enjoying it. I wanted to scream, to fight, but my body wouldn't move, pinned by the weight of their gaze and the mirror behind me, its glass rippling with the image of the mask floating, watching, waiting. The figure tilted their head, the scalpel dragging slightly, blood trickling warm down my neck. I felt it soak into my shirt, mixing with the puddle already seeping across the floor. My reflection in the mirror shifted again, the smiling face now laughing silently, its eyes hollow, black pits that seemed to pull me in. I tried to look away, but my head was locked in place, my eyes forced to meet those of the mask, both the figures and the one in the glass. The hum grew louder, a mechanical wail that shook the room, the light flickering as shadows danced across the walls. The chat messages scrolled faster, a blur of demands, bids, and laughter, each one slicing into me like the scalpel. The figure stepped closer, their free hand reaching for my face. Their gloved fingers brushed my cheek, cold and slick, leaving a smear of something wet, blood, or worse. I flinched, my body finally responding, but the straps I hadn't noticed before tightened around my wrists and ankles, yanking me into the chair. I hadn't been sitting a moment ago, but now I was bound, the leather biting into my skin, the metal frame creaking under my weight. The mirror showed it all, me, strapped down, the figure looming, the scalpel now hovering over my chest. My reflection's smile widened, splitting its face into a grotesque mask of its own, teeth glinting unnaturally under the harsh light. "You're the star now," the figure whispered, their voice distorted, layered with static and the dripping sound, as if it came from the room itself. They pressed the scalpel against my sternum, the blade piercing skin with a slow, deliberate push. Pain exploded, white-hot, radiating through my chest, but my scream was silent, swallowed by the hum. Blood welled up, soaking my shirt, dripping onto the floor, joining the endless puddle that seemed to grow with every beat of my heart. The chat erupted, messages piling on. "Open him up! Show us inside!" More blood. I could feel their eyes, hundreds, thousands, watching through the camera I couldn't see, their hunger a tangible force pressing down on me. The figure carved downward, the scalpel slicing through muscle, the sound wet and obscene. My body convulsed, the straps holding me fast, but my mind was fracturing, splitting between the pain and the mirror, where my reflection now stood behind the figure, free, smiling, holding a scalpel of its own. It raised the blade, mimicking the figure's movements, but its eyes were on me, not the body in the chair. I didn't understand. How was I there and here? Was I the one being cut, or the one watching? The hum was deafening now, a scream of its own, and the dripping was inside me, filling my lungs, choking me with the taste of copper. The figure paused, pulling the scalpel free, blood pouring from the wound in my chest. They turned to the mirror, as if acknowledging my reflection, and it nodded back, its smile stretching wider, splitting its face until it was more mask than human. The figure reached into the wound, their fingers slipping inside, probing, tearing. I felt it, every rip, every tear, but my body was numb, my screams trapped in my throat. The chat was a frenzy, bids climbing, demands growing more depraved. Pull it out, show us his heart, make him watch. The figure obliged, their hand emerging slick with blood, holding something dark and pulsing. My vision blurred, but I saw it, my heart, still beating, dangling from their fingers like a trophy. The mirror showed it too, my reflection now holding the same bloody organ, raising it to its lips as if to kiss it. I gagged, bile rising, but nothing came out. The hum stopped abruptly, the silence so heavy it crushed me. The dripping was gone, the chat frozen, the room still except for the figure and my reflection, now stepping out of the mirror, its scalpel dripping blood. "You were always here," it said, its voice mine but wrong, layered with the same static as the figure's. It walked toward me, the scalpel glinting, its mask face splitting into that impossible smile. The figure stepped back, as if giving way, and my reflection took its place, leaning close, its breath cold against my face. "You clicked the link," it whispered. "You wanted to see." I shook my head, or tried to, but the straps held me fast. I hadn't wanted this. I'd been curious, stupid, but not this. The reflection laughed, a sound that echoed in the room, in my skull, in the void where my heart should have been. It raised the scalpel, pressing it against my forehead, carving slowly, deliberately, the pain a white-hot line that burned away thought. Blood ran into my eyes, blinding me, but I could still see the mirror, now empty, reflecting only the chair, the figure, and the thing that had been me, now standing over my body, carving, smiling, free. The room dissolved, the walls melting into darkness, the chair gone, the straps nothing but shadows. I was floating, weightless, but the pain remained, anchoring me to whatever was left of my body. The dripping returned, soft at first, then louder, a rhythm that matched the pulse I shouldn't have had. I saw the concrete room again, but I wasn't in it. I was watching. My perspective shifted, like I was part of the camera, part of the stream. The chair was empty, the floor clean, the mirror gone. The figure stood in the center, their mask gleaming, holding a USB drive, black, unmarked, identical to the one I'd found. The chat window appeared, messages scrolling. Who's next? New show soon. Place your bids. The figure tilted their head as if listening, then turned to the camera, their mask filling the frame. I felt their gaze, not on the lens, but on me, wherever I was, whatever I'd become. They raised the USB drive, and the feed cut to black, but not before I saw the chat, my username, my real name, posting a single message. I'm ready. I woke up, or thought I did, in my apartment, sprawled on the floor, the broken window letting in cold air. The blood was gone, the puddle dried, the laptop closed on the desk. My chest ached, but when I touched it, there was no wound, no scar, just smooth skin. My hands shook as I stood, my eyes darting to the door, the windows, the shadows. The dripping was gone, the hum silent, the mask nowhere in sight. I laughed, a choked, desperate sound, convincing myself it was a dream, a hallucination, a bad trip from too many sleepless nights. I opened the laptop, my hand steadier now, and the browser was blank, the forum gone, the link erased. Relief washed over me, fragile but real. I'd imagined it, or they'd let me go. I was free. I stood to make coffee, to ground myself in something normal, but my foot brushed something on the floor. I looked down, my heart stopping. A USB drive, black and unmarked, lay under the couch, glinting in the morning light. I picked it up, my hands trembling, and plugged it into the laptop. The screen flickered, a video file appearing, untitled, no extension. I didn't click it. I couldn't. But it played on its own, the concrete room loading instantly. The chair was there, empty, the walls stained, the dripping sound faint but growing louder. A figure stepped into frame, not the masked one, but me, my face, my clothes, my scar. I sat in the chair, smiling, holding a scalpel, my eyes hollow, black pits. The chat window popped up, my username posting, "Show starts now." The feed zoomed in on my face, my smile splitting wider, splitting me apart, until I was nothing but the mask, glossy and white, staring back at the camera, at the audience, at myself. The dripping was everywhere, the hum rising, and I knew, in that moment, that I'd never left the room. I was the show, the star, the monster, and the stream would never end.